On a quiet, frigid night in November 2022, in the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, an act of unimaginable violence shattered the lives of 4 young students and sent shockwaves across the nation. In a country where true crime stories often command public fascination, this case stood apart for its brutality, mystery, and the disturbing questions it left in its wake. The victims were bright, ambitious college students in the prime of their lives, their futures full of promise, their dreams still unfolding. They lived together in an off-campus home just blocks from the University of Idaho, a place known for its small-town charm and low crime rate. That sense of safety and familiarity was obliterated on the night of November 13, 2022. 4 young lives were cut short in the span of a few early morning hours. The killings were savage, each victim stabbed multiple times as they slept or tried to defend themselves. There was no clear motive, no immediate suspect, and no murder weapon recovered at the scene. As days turned into weeks and national media descended on Moscow, many wondered, could a killer still be at large in this close-knit community? The investigation that followed gripped the entire country. Law enforcement's search for answers crossed state lines, and the public's hunger for information only grew. Rumors spread rapidly online, as true crime enthusiasts, armchair detectives, and news outlets speculated endlessly about who could have committed such an atrocity, and why. Then, in late December 2022, a surprising arrest was made over 2,000 miles away. Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student from Washington State University, just across the state border from Moscow, was taken into custody at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. The suspect was not a drifter or outsider, but a scholar deeply immersed in the study of crime itself. As we examine this tragic case in detail, we will explore the lives of the victims, the timeline of the crime, the twists and turns of the investigation, and the mounting evidence against Bryan Kohberger. We will also look ahead to the upcoming trial that promises to answer some, but perhaps not all, of the questions that have haunted so many since that terrible night. This is the story of the Idaho student murders, a case that stunned a community, captivated a nation, and revealed the dark intersection of crime, academia, and obsession. The victims and their lives. To understand the magnitude of this tragedy, we must first honor and remember the lives that were lost. The victims were 4 friends, each beloved by their families, their classmates, and the community around them. Kaylee Goncalves, age 21, was a senior at the University of Idaho majoring in general studies, with plans to graduate early and embark on a new life in Austin, Texas. Known for her infectious laughter and adventurous spirit, Kaylee was described by her family as fiercely loyal and full of ambition. Her bright future extended beyond academics. She had recently purchased her first car and had lined up a job in the tech industry. Madison Mogen, age 21, was a senior marketing major and Kaylee's lifelong best friend. The two had been inseparable since childhood, and their bond remained strong as they navigated college life together. Madison, known as Maddie to her friends, was outgoing, creative, and deeply loved by those around her. She worked part-time at a local restaurant, where she was adored by colleagues and regulars alike. Xana Kernodle, age 20, was a junior majoring in marketing. Described as energetic, witty, and always smiling, Xana brought joy to every room she entered. She was known for her quick sense of humor and deep love of her family and friends. Xana was dating Ethan Chapin, and the two were often seen together around campus and town. Ethan Chapin, age 20, was a freshman majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism management. Standing tall with a broad smile and an easygoing personality, Ethan was a triplet and shared a deep bond with his siblings. He was athletic, kind-hearted, and always up for an adventure. Ethan's relationship with Xana was a source of happiness for them both. On the evening of November 12, 2022, these 4 friends were simply living their lives, attending a party, going out for food, and spending time together in the comfort of their shared home. In the early hours of November 13th, their lives were brutally taken. Their families would later speak of their vibrant spirits, their laughter, and the void left behind by their senseless deaths. The house they shared at 1122 King Road became a tragic landmark. A 3-story rental home located just a short walk from campus, it was a place of friendship, parties, and study sessions, a typical student dwelling that had now become the site of a horrific crime. As we move forward into the events of that night, it is important to remember that behind every headline, and every legal motion are four young people whose dreams were cut short far too soon. The crime, November 13, 2022. The night of November 12, 2022, was a typical Saturday in Moscow, Idaho. The town, home to roughly 25,000 residents and the University of Idaho, was quiet and cold as winter approached. For the four victims, the evening began like countless others, with friends, laughter, and social gatherings. Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogen spent the night out together at a local bar called the Corner Club, a popular spot among college students. Surveillance footage later showed them at the bar, chatting with friends and enjoying the night. Later, around 1:30 a.m., they stopped by a nearby food truck called the Grub Truck, which had a live streaming camera set up for customers. In that video, Kaylee and Madison appeared relaxed and in good spirits, ordering pasta and laughing together. They then took a ride home using a private party driver, arriving back at their King Road residence shortly before 2 a.m. Meanwhile, Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin had spent the evening at a fraternity party at the nearby Sigma Chi house, where Ethan was a member. The two returned home around 1:45 a.m. Inside the King Road house that night were 6 roommates in total. In addition to Kaylee, Madison, and Xana, 2 other surviving roommates, DM and BF, their identities later shielded in court documents for privacy, were also home. The 3-story layout of the house meant that roommates often came and went independently, and the multiple entrances made it easy for residents to come and go without disturbing one another. Sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m., the unthinkable occurred. According to law enforcement and court filings, a masked intruder entered the home. Armed with a fixed-blade knife, the assailant moved swiftly and lethally through the house. Xana and Ethan were killed on the 2nd floor. Evidence later suggested Xana had been awake during part of the attack. Defensive wounds on her hands indicated a struggle. Ethan, likely ambushed in Xana's bedroom, also suffered multiple stab wounds. On the 3rd floor, Kaylee and Madison were found together in Madison's bed. Both were brutally stabbed multiple times, their wounds severe and fatal. Later autopsy reports suggested they were likely asleep when the attack began, but may have awakened during the assault. Downstairs, the 2 surviving roommates on the 1st floor were left unharmed. One of them, identified in court documents as DM, later reported hearing strange noises during the night, including what she described as crying, a voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," and footsteps. At one point, she saw a figure dressed in black with a mask covering his mouth and nose, walking past her as he exited the house. Frozen in shock and fear, she locked her bedroom door and did not call police immediately. It wasn't until almost noon, 11:58 a.m. on November 13th, that a 911 call was made from one of the surviving roommates' phones, reporting an unconscious person at the residence. When officers arrived at the house, they discovered a gruesome scene. 4 victims, multiple stab wounds, significant blood evidence, and no sign of forced entry. The killer was gone. The murders sent shockwaves through Moscow and beyond. For weeks afterward, rumors swirled about the nature of the crime. Some speculated it was targeted. Others feared a random killer was still at large. The Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, and FBI launched a joint investigation, urging patience as they worked through a complex and deeply disturbing crime scene. The investigation begins from the outset. The investigation into the King Road murders presented daunting challenges. Yet, no murder weapon was recovered, and no suspect was immediately identified. There were no signs of sexual assault, robbery, or burglary. The motive remained elusive. Law enforcement quickly ruled out the surviving roommates and other individuals who had been in contact with the victims that evening. The 2 roommates on the 1st floor were cooperative and devastated. Their accounts, along with surveillance footage, digital evidence, and cell phone records, helped establish a clearer timeline of the victims' final hours. Police appealed to the public for assistance, asking for tips, surveillance videos from nearby homes and businesses, and information about suspicious activity near the King Road residence. Thousands of leads poured in. Among the earliest and most significant pieces of evidence was surveillance footage showing a white Hyundai Elantra near the crime scene in the early hours of November 13th. The vehicle, recorded by neighborhood cameras, appeared multiple times near King Road between 3:29 a.m. and 4:20 a.m., roughly coinciding with the estimated window of the murders. Investigators also collected extensive DNA evidence from the scene. including a single male DNA sample found on a knife sheath left near the bodies of Kaylee and Madison. The sheath was for a K-bar combat-style knife, a military-grade fixed-blade weapon commonly used for tactical purposes. The presence of the sheath suggested the killer had either been careless or confident, leaving behind a critical clue. As weeks passed, frustration mounted in the public. Many criticized the Moscow Police Department for a perceived lack of transparency. Officials were tight-lipped, emphasizing the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. Behind the scenes, however, detectives were painstakingly working to identify the white Hyundai Elantra and analyze the DNA sample found on the knife sheath. By mid-December, their focus narrowed to a man living just across the state line in Pullman, Washington, a graduate student with an unusual academic background and an unsettling connection to the field of criminology. Public frenzy and media attention. As word of the quadruple homicide spread, the small town of Moscow found itself under an intense media spotlight. National outlets like CNN, Fox News, and NBC dispatched reporters to the snowy streets of the Idaho college town, and true crime enthusiasts flooded online forums with speculation and theories. The lack of an immediate arrest, coupled with vague and sometimes conflicting statements from law enforcement, fueled widespread fear and rumor. Within days, hashtags like #Idaho4 and Our Moscow Murders began trending on platforms like Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. Online sleuths combed through the victims' social media accounts, CCTV footage, and even background information on their friends and acquaintances, hoping to unearth overlooked clues. The victims' families, while grieving, made public pleas for information. Kaylee Goncalves' father, Steve Goncalves, became a particularly vocal advocate, urging police to be more transparent, and sharing details about his daughter I.'s injuries that he hoped would spur the investigation forward. Meanwhile, students at the University of Idaho fled campus in fear. Many skipped the remainder of the semester, opting for remote classes. Local businesses displayed yellow ribbons and posters honoring the victims, while candlelight vigils drew hundreds in quiet mourning. Through it all, the question persisted. Who would commit such a brutal crime, and why? Bryan Kohberger, the suspect. On December 30, 2022, 47 days after the murders, authorities made a stunning announcement. A suspect had been arrested in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, over 2,500 miles from Moscow. His name was Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student studying criminology at Washington State University, located just 10 miles from Moscow in Pullman, Washington. Kohberger's background was immediately scrutinized. He held a Bachelor's degree in psychology and a Master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University in Pennsylvania. His academic work had focused heavily on the minds of criminals, including a Reddit survey he posted in 2022, asking ex-convicts to describe their thoughts and emotions while committing crimes. Classmates and professors at Washington State described him as intensely intellectual, but socially awkward. Some recalled unsettling conversations where Kohberger expressed an unusual fascination with criminal behavior and forensic evidence. Physically, he stood over 6 feet tall, slender with deep-set eyes and dark eyebrows. He drove a white Hyundai Elantra, matching the vehicle seen near the King Roadhouse the night of the murders. Court documents revealed how investigators had zeroed in on Kohberger. Using video surveillance and license plate databases, they tracked his vehicle's movements in the early hours of November 13th. His phone records showed patterns of travel consistent with stalking or surveillance near the victim's home, including 12 instances of his phone pinging near King Road in the weeks leading up to the killings. The clinching evidence was the DNA profile found on the knife sheath. In mid-December, FBI agents recovered trash from Kohberger's family home in Pennsylvania. A familial DNA match confirmed that the male DNA on the sheath most likely belonged to Bryan Kohberger. Following his extradition to Idaho in January 2023, Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. The arrest. December 30, 2022. The arrest of Bryan Kohberger marked a pivotal turning point in the case. At the time of his apprehension, Kohberger had been visiting his parents in Pennsylvania for winter break. The FBI and Pennsylvania State Police executed a tactical raid on the Kohberger residence during the early morning hours, seizing electronic devices, a white Hyundai Elantra, and numerous items of potential evidentiary value. Court filings later revealed Kohberger had applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department months earlier, expressing interest in helping rural law enforcement agencies understand how to collect and analyze technological data in criminal investigations. The juxtaposition was chilling. A man who had studied the criminal mind and aspired to work alongside police was now accused of one of the most brutal crimes in recent memory. Public reaction to the arrest was swift and visceral. For many in Moscow, it brought relief and a sense of closure. For others, especially the victims' families, it sparked new questions. Had Kohberger known the victims? Was the attack targeted, as police initially suggested? What was his motive? As Kohberger was booked into the Latah County Jail in Moscow, Idaho, he waived extradition and faced his first court appearance on January 5, 2023. Cameras captured his stoic demeanor and emotionless expression as he stood before the judge. Evidence and court filings. In the months following Kohberger's arrest, prosecutors slowly unveiled the mountain of evidence they intended to present at trial. Key evidence included DNA on the Ka-Bar knife sheath, directly linking Kohberger to the crime scene, cell phone records showing Kohberger's device pinging near King Road both before and after the murders, surveillance footage of his white Hyundai Elantra near the victim's residence multiple times on the night of the crime. A search of Kohberger's apartment and vehicle uncovered dark clothing, latex gloves, and possible blood evidence. His academic writings, including the Reddit survey seeking first-hand accounts of criminal thinking. Defense attorneys countered by questioning the integrity of the evidence and the methods used to obtain it. They argued the DNA could have been transferred inadvertently and that video footage alone was not conclusive. As the pretrial phase progressed, both sides filed numerous motions, some to suppress evidence, others to compel discovery or clarify jury instructions. Pretrial developments, 2023-2024. The legal battle between prosecution and defense unfolded steadily throughout 2023 and into 2024. In May 2023, prosecutors formally announced that they would seek the death penalty against Bryan Kohberger. Under Idaho law, aggravating circumstances, such as multiple victims, exceptional cruelty, or an especially heinous act, justify capital punishment. Prosecutors argued that the utter disregard for human life and the especially depraved nature of the killings warranted the harshest penalty available. Meanwhile, Kohberger's defense team, led by prominent Idaho Capitol defender Ann Taylor, began building a complex argument centered around forensic science and reasonable doubt. They filed motions to suppress evidence gathered through genetic genealogy, contesting the warrantless acquisition of familial DNA samples from trash collected in Pennsylvania. They also questioned the validity of the cell phone data, vehicle surveillance, and forensic analysis of Kohberger's belongings. Another significant development arose in June 2023, when Kohberger's defense suggested he had an alibi. Though details were sparse, court filings hinted that Kohberger would claim to have been on a long drive alone the night of the murders, potentially explaining gaps in his cell phone activity. Public interest in the case remained intense. True crime podcasts, YouTube documentaries, and social media accounts dedicated to the Idaho Four flourished. Court hearings were often live-streamed, drawing thousands of viewers eager to follow each procedural step. In December 2024, after months of legal wrangling, Judge John Judge ruled on a key defense motion, requesting a change of venue, citing pervasive pretrial publicity that made seating an impartial jury in Latah County nearly impossible. The judge agreed, relocating the trial to Ada County, which includes the city of Boise, over 300 miles away. Simultaneously, the trial date was officially reset to August 11, 2025, giving both sides additional time to prepare. Anticipated trial, 2025. As the new trial date of August 2025 approached, both prosecution and defense finalized their strategies. The prosecution's case centered on a clear timeline of Kohberger's movements, forensic links to the crime scene, and his unusual pattern of behavior prior to the murders. Key witnesses for the prosecution were expected to include crime scene investigators who processed the King Road house, DNA analysts who linked Kohberger's profile to the knife sheath, cell tower experts demonstrating Kohberger's travel patterns, surveillance analysts who tracked his vehicle, surviving roommate DM, who allegedly saw the masked intruder. For the defense, the strategy hinged on challenging the reliability of forensic evidence, raising doubts about contamination, chain of custody, and alternative explanations for Kohberger's presence near King Road. They were also expected to highlight the absence of direct eyewitness identification, lack of motive, and no murder weapon ever recovered. Kohberger maintained his innocence throughout, entering a plea of not guilty and refraining from public comment. Court analysts predicted that the trial could last 10 to 12 weeks, with extensive jury selection processes due to the notoriety of the case. Legal and social impact. Beyond the courtroom, the Idaho student murders case sparked broader conversations about crime, justice, and privacy in the digital age. The investigation showcased the growing use of genetic genealogy, the same technique that led to the arrest of the Golden State Killer in 2018, in solving cold cases and complex homicides. Legal scholars debated the implications of using familial DNA without warrants, while privacy advocates raised concerns about potential overreach. The case also reignited interest in criminology and the psychology of offenders who study crime itself. Kohberger's academic pursuits blurred the line between scholar and suspect, raising unsettling questions about how knowledge of crime can be weaponized. On college campuses, including the University of Idaho, discussions about campus safety, student mental health, and community vigilance gained renewed urgency. The University of Idaho later announced plans to demolish the King Road house, with the consent of the victims' families, as a gesture of healing and closure. The victims' legacies. Amid legal proceedings, the families of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin worked tirelessly to ensure their loved ones were remembered for their lives, not their deaths. Memorial scholarships were established in each of their names at the University of Idaho, supporting students pursuing fields like marketing, recreation, and community leadership. Community events and vigils continued to honor their memories, and social media tributes shared stories of their kindness, humor, and aspirations. Kaylee's family advocated for victim rights legislation, aiming to strengthen support services for crime victims in Idaho. Ethan's family launched a foundation promoting youth sports and mental health awareness. Their legacies endured as symbols of resilience and unity, reminding the public to focus not only on the perpetrator but on the lives that were lost. Conclusion. The murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin on November 13, 2022, devastated a community and captured a nation's attention. In a quiet town where violent crime was rare, their tragic deaths shattered a sense of safety and left enduring scars. The investigation, spanning multiple states, involving cutting-edge forensic techniques, and culminating in the arrest of a criminology student, reflected the complexities of modern law enforcement and justice. As the August 2025 trial approaches, many questions remain. Was Bryan Kohberger solely responsible? What was his motive? And will justice, however it is defined, be fully served? What is certain is that the impact of this case will be felt for years to come. It is a story of loss, of perseverance, and of a community's search for answers in the face of unthinkable tragedy. Please subscribe and like my YouTube channel for more content.